I'm not actually even sure where this was published, but it was a very interesting thing. Succinct description of how a polio vaccine was made. As everybody knows, I'm sure, as soon as you start questioning viruses and the disproven germ hypothesis and the safety and efficacy of vaccines, the thing that you will always hear is, but how do you explain that we wiped out polio? Now, we've been over that many times, but there's another angle of this, which is one thing to bring up, and this is probably particularly with your healthcare providers, particularly doctors, so that's interesting. Why don't we look at how a polio vaccine was made? Because I wouldn't say one has to know how something is made in order to know that it works. So I don't know how a car is actually made, but I'm pretty sure that it works. But you would think if you're a medical doctor and you're a promoter of the disproven viral hypothesis and a promoter of vaccines, you would at least have a good idea, if not know the exact details, of how one of the most important, maybe the most important vaccine ever, meaning the polio vaccine, how it's actually made. Because as I've said over and over again, once you understand how the vaccine is made, most rational, sane people would conclude they would never want to introduce such a thing into their body, either orally or through injection. The other thing it helps is to understand, when you understand how a polio vaccine is made, you then see the steps and have a better understanding for the so-called viral culture process. And then you can clearly see that calling this isolation is a ridiculous inversion of wording, and that there is actually no point in this process where a so-called virus, a particle called a virus, could possibly be shown to exist by doing these steps. So understanding how a polio vaccine is made, and by the way, I'm hoping somebody from our team will actually put this under the link, or put a link to it. I think I sent it to you, so that you can actually print this out and carry it around in your wallet, or your purse or whatever, so that if anybody brings up the polio, you say, oh, well, let's look at how this thing is actually made, which is the same as how they prove viruses exist and how a virus is so-called isolated, and you can see exactly what nonsense the whole thing is. So let's go through it together, and I may stop and explain some things along the way. Would you like to know how the original Salk polio, that's Jonas Salk, polio vaccine was made? Step 1, put all the glassware inside a hot steam bath or sterilize it. 2, import macaca mulata monkeys from India for the experiments. 3, prepare a mixture called Medium 199 containing 2% calf serum, 200 units per mil of penicillin, 200 grams per mil of dihydrostreptomycin, that's another antibiotic, and 50 units per mil of mycostatin, otherwise known as nystatin squib, that's an antifungal. The only thing to know here is they've switched these antibiotics to gentamicin and amphotericin lately, otherwise similar. The pH of the medium was brought to 7 by the addition of a sodium Not sure what that chemical is. HCO3, full serum ingredients commented below. Then they euthanize, i.e. kill the monkeys, remove their kidneys, and then place the kidney into a tube and hand mince it with the scissors to small bits. So that's the first thing that will probably get your friend's attention. Do they really think that euthanizing, i.e. killing monkeys to remove their kidneys is the way, is actually a good idea? Certainly not for the monkeys. After the kidney tissue is weighed and decapsulated, they put the tissue in a centrifuge tube where they washed it in a phosphate buffered saline and placed it in a trypsinization flask. Trypsin enzymes break down the proteins. So trypsin is a digestive enzyme which breaks down the proteins in the kidney and is then centrifuged at 800 to 1,000 RPMs for 10 minutes to separate the tissues and cells. Okay, so the kidney cells are then mixed with medium 199 and incubated, which is another word for fermented, rotted essentially, at 37 degrees centigrade for 6 to 8 days. By the end of the 6 to 8 day period, the bottles and tubes were covered with a, quote, confluent sheet of cell growth. So all this was to essentially increase the growth of the cells. Once the medium 199 is exhausted, half is siphoned off to be replaced by a fresh medium 199. They then add the, quote, polio virus for the first time. 3 different strains, supposedly with no other details on source, isolation process, or genome determination. So they allege that they add 3 different strains of this polio virus. Likely those were actually, quote, grown in a different cell culture, and then some of the cell culture was harvested and added to this cell culture. They say the genome determination, because that wasn't discovered until 1981, when Vince Rankinelli and David Baltimore at MIT were said to have sequenced the virus. Okay, so now we have one cell culture added to another cell culture. The medium was changed. And then we go on. Number 9, the bottles continue to rock for 4 days in the solution, culturing, fermenting, decaying, and then it's ready for harvesting. So again, the important point is that at no point in this was a actual virus determined to be present. It was simply one cell culture result added to another. No physical proof or actual physical isolation or purification of any particle was done at any point in this process. 10, scientists then visually look at the vials under a microscope to do a titration test to discern how much live virus is in the solution, hand counting particles that could be anything. Very scientific. So we're not talking about here an electron microscope. We're talking about a usual light microscope, and they're looking to see how many percentage of the cells are essentially dead or have been, cytopathically affected. So in other words, they're large and not looking like healthy, normal cells. And that is what they call titration, to tell them how much virus is present. Again, never seeing an actual virus, just seeing the percentage of dead cells. Next is filtration, the most egregious part. They filter the solution first through porcelain filters, which is a heavy metal risk, and then through multiple sheets of asbestos to drain out any kidney tissue or stray bacteria. This part of the process is not disclosed in the video, but is detailed in the original paper on the polio vaccine process. They made multiple trivalent vaccine pools, with some having additional additives like sodium bisulfate, along with parabens, a known carcinogen and endocrine disruptor. So again, they filter this mix of basically dead cells with all these enzymes and antibiotics and antifungals and calf serum in it. They call that a live virus. So now rabbits, monkeys, guinea pigs, and chickens are injected with the live virus vaccine solution. See pages 11, 12, 13 in the full paper to ensure it's free of pathogens. Now, the climax of the process, as they call it, inactivation. This is where they mix the vaccine solution with formaldehyde. Then they let it sit together for 66 to 68 hours. The narrator then hilariously says that when what remains can only do good, can provide humans with protection of paralytic polio. So an inactivated or so-called dead virus, so a live virus would be just all the steps before the formaldehyde. So it's essentially a filtered results of a cell culture, a so-called viral culture. When they want to inactivate it to, quote, make sure this live virus doesn't give you polio, they inactivate it by putting it together with formaldehyde for 66 to 68 hours. The enemy of man can now become his servant. Propaganda in the 1900s just hits differently, doesn't it? Then the process of mass distribution, they get these massive tanks and mix in all the solutions, adjuvants, chemicals, ingredients for mass production and preservation. Before mass administration, they do a couple experiments on mice and monkey to ensure the vaccine is creating enough, quote, polio-fighting antibodies in humans. The remainder of the process details the various tests they do as the vaccine lots are distributed before really turning up the propaganda and showing President Eisenhower's son receiving the polio vaccine. Welcome to modern vaccinology, a hilariously unscientific process predicated on insane barbarism, rife with fraud and immense hubris. More details in the comments below. So again, this is something you can carry with you. And if anybody tells you about the benefits of the polio vaccine, you can ask them how this thing was made, and you can see that it is a process which injecting or ingesting the results of a slightly purified cell culture can't possibly be the road towards better health.